Welcome to the Plain Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Rob Port. Coming up a little bit later in the show, State Representative Luke Simons is going to be on, and we're going to be talking to him about legislation he put in place to ban gun buyback programs in the state of North Dakota. Now, he's actually gotten some national attention from this, even from a New York Times columnist who called the legislation, it's like I don't know, I'm forgetting the exact quote. It's something like one of the dumbest bills to pass this year or something like that. I should note it hasn't passed yet. It did pass in the State House, still has yet to be voted on in the State Senate, and of course, if it passes there, Governor Doug Burgum would have to sign it into law. So not policy yet, but still, it's an interesting proposal. Representative Simons argues that gun buyback programs, that's where the government basically says, hey, bring us your guns, no questions asked, we'll buy them from you. His argument is they don't work. And the argument from the critics, interestingly enough, is that it doesn't matter if they reduce crime. We're just buying up guns and getting them off the street, and that's the whole point, which, boy, I don't know if that's really the point or not. I don't want the government to just be buying up people's guns. If we're going to affect policy, I'd like it to be policy that makes our community safer. But we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. Before we get there, a rant. Those of you who follow the North Dakota media, and that's most of you in my audience, probably saw this headline recently. I quote, North Dakota tops list in study for percentage of drivers with a DUI history. Now, that headline was over an article describing research done by an insurance quotes website. And that sounds a little weird. It's actually not that unusual. I could tell you something. If you see these headlines that rank various states saying, this state has the most people who have saved for retirement, or this state has, the most, is the drunkest state in the union, or this, this state is that. What happens with a lot of these is they get sponsored by websites that want to market themselves. They're websites that maybe sell insurance or list insurance companies, or they'll list credit cards or whatever. It's websites that aren't really in the business of data research per se, but what they'll do is they'll throw together some statistics, they'll produce a report, they'll pitch that report to reporters, hoping that the reporters will write an article about it and then link their website, thus driving more web traffic to them and raising their name recognition and maybe even raising their search engine scores. It's marketing. It's not data science. But reporters fall for it because, well, reporters are suckers for easy copy, and this is easy copy, and people like, for whatever reason, I'm not sure I need to explain to you the popularity of the listicle on the internet, but people like these articles that sort of compare states and say this state is this and that state is that, and we look up and down, and it's over the years it's proven to be a popular genre of article, and that's what this was. It was basically an insurance quotes website. I don't need to mention which one it was because, well, I'm not really in the business of driving traffic or whatever to them. But what they did is they came up with research, and they said that North Dakotans we have the highest percentage of drivers with a DUI history. And what frustrates me about this is that DUI arrests are not really the goal of DUI policy. Think about that for a moment. I know that sounds weird, but it's not, right? We didn't make drunk driving illegal so that we could arrest a bunch of people. That's not the goal. We made DUIs illegal because driving while inebriated, while under the influence of alcohol or under the influence of drugs, it's dangerous. It makes our roads dangerous. It leads to death. It leads to injury. It leads to property damage. We don't want any of those things, so we made it illegal. Now, arrests are a way in which we enforce that law, right? I mean, that's the teeth. We said it's illegal to drive drunk or illegal to drive under the influence. And if you do it, arresting you is the tool that we have at our disposal to enforce that law. Arresting people is a means to an end. It is not the end in and of itself. Now, the reason why that's important is because we do get all of these news articles about these reports, and they're talking about DUI arrests. And even when the government puts out reports about DUI arrests, that seems to be what everybody focuses on. Did arrests go up? Did arrests go down? How many people did we arrest? How many people per capita? Et cetera, et cetera. But let me tell you, arrests are not the important metric that we should be following. Arrests are not the point, as I just explained. What we should be following, the metric that we should be following, is the number of alcohol-related traffic incidents we have had. How many people got hurt on our roads because somebody was drinking? How many people got killed on our roads because somebody was drinking? How many people got into a car accident, slid off the road, et cetera, had some sort of an incident because somebody was drinking or under the influence of drug or in any way inebriated and behind the wheel? That's what we care about. Now, the reason why this is important, because here's the problem. If we do a list and we say, okay, well, a given state, let's say North Dakota, right? Because we were at the top of this particular list for the percentage of people with a DUI. So let's say there's somebody goes out there and they do a bunch of research and they say, hey, this state leads the nation in arrests per capita for DUI. But the reason why that state leads the nation in arrests per capita for DUI is because that state spends more than any other state on DUI enforcement, right? They hire more law enforcement officers. They task those officers for DUI patrols and sobriety checkpoints and all these other things that leads to lots and lots of arrests. Now, if we just use arrests as a metric, we would say, well, that state's the worst in the union when it comes to drunk driving. But maybe they're not the worst in the union. Maybe they're just doing the most enforcement. Maybe they're just doing more enforcement and they're arresting more people than anybody else. The arrests don't really tell us anything. What if they arrest lots and lots of people and then as a result, the roads are safer and they have the fewest alcohol-related, fatalities and injuries and crashes than any other state? Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see how this could be misleading? Do you see how using arrests could be a misleading statistic? Now, the problem, though, is we get these reports and they go out, and again, they're marketing. They're not real data science. And they go out and the reporters pick them up, and then we get headlines and everybody's buzzing about it. And they're saying, oh, North Dakota's a drunk place. Everybody in North Dakota is drunk. It's such a problem. And then our lawmakers, they pass new and then next thing you know, we're basing public, policy on it, and we're basing law enforcement policy on it. And police chiefs and sheriffs are basing their patrol plans and everything else around this data. And we're chasing something that's not even really all that important. I will tell you that I don't really care that much how many people get arrested for DUI. Because I think if we go out and we lead the nation in the number of people that we're arresting for DUI, but the number of people who die on our roads, the number of people who are injured on our roads, the amount of property damage that happens on our roads as a result from inebriated driving, if that doesn't change, or if it goes up, what did we accomplish? What was the point of arresting all of those people and putting them through the criminal justice system if we didn't impact those things? There was no point to it at all. We didn't accomplish anything. It was a fruitless exercise because we were focusing on the wrong metric. Now, I'm all in favor of if we feel like we have a drunk driving problem, and I will be honest, I think North Dakota is a drinking place. We like to booze it up in North Dakota. We really do. It's socially acceptable. It's got its roots in where, a lot of the people who live in North Dakota are Germanic or Scandinavian, or from, Western and Northern Europe, where drinking is very much a part of the culture. And we brought that here with us. We like to drink. And in addition to that, even in our big cities, public transportation is not really a thing. It's not very accessible. And once you get outside of the cities, into the more rural areas, public transportation pretty much doesn't exist at all. So if that's reality, and that leads to a lot of DUIs, and I'm all in favor of enforcement. If we feel like that's how we can reduce the number of people who are driving drunk on our roads and make our roads safer, then great. I'm all in favor of doing that. But what I don't want to get tied into is using the wrong metric, having the wrong goal, where we're saying, well, we got all these arrests out there, and now all these people we're arresting, and therefore, that's the goal we're chasing. I don't think that tells us anything. At the end of the day, we want our roads to be safer, and we measure that by accidents, by fatalities. How many people were hurt? How many people were killed? How much property damage happened? That's the metric to be chasing. Because again, there's a lot of variables that can affect arrests. It could be how many cops are on the road, or not even just how many cops. North Dakota is a very low crime state compared to a lot of other places in the world. We're very lucky. We don't have a lot of murder here. We don't have a lot of assaults. We don't have a lot of robberies. We don't have a lot of that sort of crime. Our law enforcement here, thus, is freed up to focus on things like DUIs. It generally, hey, that's a good thing, right? I'm glad we don't have more serious crimes. I'm glad that we don't have to task a lot of law enforcement resources to that sort of thing, because there's just, I'm not saying it doesn't happen here, but compared to other places in the world, it doesn't happen a lot here. But maybe you could argue that our law enforcement's focus on drunk driving is what drives our arrests so high. Again, I don't know that North Dakota really does all that well, even if you measure the problem by alcohol-related accidents and fatalities and all that stuff. I still think that we've probably got an issue. But the next time you see a headline talking about some study about drunk driving or, retirement savings or anything else, look closely at who produced the study. It's usually not a think tank. It's probably some website that wants to sell you a credit card, and, well, I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. That's it for today's rant. State Representative Luke Simons up next. This episode of the Plain Talk Podcast is brought to you by Energy of North Dakota. Oil and natural gas from North Dakota strengthens all of America. And through our abundance of talents, innovations, and technologies, energy responsibly produced here translates to worldwide economic stability. With producers and our communities working together, we're securing a sustainable future that generation after generation can build on. It's all happening right now with Energy of North Dakota. Learn more at energyofnorthdakota.com. State Representative Luke Simons joins me. Luke is a Republican. He's from Dickinson, and he introduced legislation. It's House Bill 1381, which actually has already passed the State House 66-26 earlier this month. It now goes over to the Senate to see what the senators think about it. But what the bill would do is it would essentially buy gun buyback programs conducted by state or local governments in the North Dakota, as well as any buyback that might be organized, I guess, maybe by a private group or a nonprofit group or what have you, that would be funded by taxpayer dollars. So essentially what Representative Simons' bill is saying is gun buyback programs can happen. They just can't happen with the sanction of the state, and they can't happen being funded at all by taxpayer dollars. Representative Simons, did I describe all that correctly?
Yes, sir. Yep. Liberal groups can still do their gun buyback programs. Just the state, city, counties, police stations, sheriffs cannot have anything to do with it. And there certainly is no taxpayer dollars disarming America.
Why did you think this bill was? Why did you think this bill was necessary?
Well, it's a huge epidemic across our country right now. It's happening all over the place. NRA is talking about it. I had a constituent actually talk to me about it. And when he did, it just clicked. And so we put together a piece of legislation and saying in North Dakota, we're not going to have that trash here. They don't work anyways. Gun buybacks don't work. There's data's out on that. They don't work. Doesn't deter crime whatsoever.
I was reading an article in the Fargo Forum by my colleague Patrick Springer, and he quotes a couple of people who say that you're all wet about that it doesn't work. I'm going to quote here from the article. An advocate of a gun buyback programs, Mike Weiser, author of Mike the Gun Guy, which describes itself as a magazine with news and notes from both sides about guns, called the bill, quote, the single dumbest piece of legislation enacted anywhere in the United States. Now, he's referring specifically to the studies that you're talking about, Representative Simons, and saying that gun buyback programs don't work. This, again, from Patrick Springer's article, I quote, the study is flawed, Weiser argued in a February 21st blog post, because the success of gun buyback programs should be measured by the number of guns they take off the street. He touts a gun buyback program that started in Worcester, Massachusetts, that has spread to 5 states that he credits with taking many guns off the street over the past 18 years. So he's saying, you're arguing is, let's ban this as a tactic, at least an officially government-sanctioned tactic to address gun crime and gun violence in North Dakota. Let's ban it because you're saying it doesn't work. He says it does work, but I think the metric he's using is a little weird, because he's saying, well, the goal is just to get guns off the street. And I don't think that's the truth. What we all want to stop is gun violence, right? What we all want to stop is crime. If a gun buyback program doesn't reduce violence, if it doesn't reduce crime, then what's the point? Just for the government to collect a bunch of guns? That's not the point, is it?
No, it's not the point at all. I don't know who this guy is, but I give liberals hundreds of things to talk about every single day, so I could care less what they write. And I simply do not have time to write what liberals write about me every single day around the country. The truth is I started doing some studying, and these buyback programs that use entities of the state, such as cities, counties, etc., police stations, sheriff's office, the reason they do that is because it's calculated. We're living in the day and age right now, Rob, where if you wear a shirt with the NRA on it, you can be suspended and expelled from schools. We're living in a time where if you, God forbid, put up a picture on Facebook of you shooting an AR-15 and you happen to go to a school that doesn't like guns, they can throw you out of school for a day or two, or give you detention, or suspend you, or expel you. The point is they are doing it on purpose from their own lips, because when the police are seen taking guns off the street, it sends a message to the people of the United States of America that the government is taking your guns. And that could be no further from the truth, especially in North Dakota. And I want to make sure our state, the people of our state, realize that our job is to protect those people's rights, to make sure they're in the hands of good people. And that's our only duty. So it's a different perspective. Yes, I don't think that taxpayers' dollars should go to a gun program that does not work. Whoever you just quoted, him saying it works, he's wrong. He's dead wrong, and data shows that. If I took,
but the interesting, just to interject there, the interesting thing is he's not really saying that it works in the way he's having a different debate than you and I are, Representative Simons, because you and I think, are both concerned about crime, right? We don't want to see anybody get hurt. We don't want to see people robbed or murdered or any of those terrible crimes that can happen when somebody uses a gun. We don't want those things. He's not even talking about that. He's saying that's not even the goal. I mean, let me read you your quote again. He is saying, he says, and again, this is quoting Patrick Springer, the study is flawed, Weiser argued in a February 21st blog post, because the success of gun buyback programs should be measured by the number of guns they take off the street. So he's not even talking about whether or not that lowers crime or not. He's just saying, well, we took a bunch of guns off the street. Mission accomplished, I guess.
And those people are all bad people that turn their guns in too. I mean,
I know. I've heard stories of people that just have like a crappy old gun they didn't want around anymore, so took it into the buyback program and cashed it in and got some money off of it because the government would pay them more than maybe they could get on the open market, because it was just. I mean, there's been stories about that all over the place where people they're not even complete guns. I've seen where people have actually like bought pipe and stuff and made fake guns and turned those in and got paid for them because. Yeah. It's just this sort of indiscriminate thing. So, I mean, if that's the big defense for the policy, it's not much of a defense at all. Now, I want to read you something else, because this was also from Patrick Springer's article. Your bill got the attention of Nicholas Kristof. He's a columnist for the New York Times. And he also called, I don't know if these guys got like a talking points memo together, but he also wrote that your bill is possibly the dumbest bit of legislation so far this year. But it's interesting because he kind of goes down the same path that the previous commentator, Mike Weiss, goes down. He says he acknowledged that the effectiveness of gun buyback programs is controversial. In fact, he wrote, we don't really know whether gun buyback programs are a cost-effective way to reduce gun crimes, but there is some logic to the idea that if fewer unwanted guns are lying around, there will be fewer murders, accidents, and suicides. I don't know about that. I mean, essentially, again, he's just arguing, I don't know if it works or not, but it seems like it should. I mean, that's the big defense here. Like they're calling your bill stupid, but their big defense is, well, we don't know if it works, but it sure seems like it maybe should.
Sure. Well, I have no idea who he is. And in New York, I mean, the only good thing I've seen come out of New York so far is Donald Trump. So,
hey, there's an excellent baseball team called the New York Yankees that come out of the Bronx.
True.
Some excellent baseball that comes out of it. There's a lot of cool things. Don't be hard on New York. There's a lot of cool things in New York, Luke. Come on.
That's true.
I mean, it's not Dickinson, but come on. New York's a cool place.
Right. Except for if you're an unborn baby, then it's not so cool. But anyways, the point is I mean, I could really care less what somebody in New York says. If we had New York politics here in North Dakota, boy, would we ever be screwed. You know, the thing is the verdict is out. They don't work. The people that sell guns to these people or to these buybacks are simply people that don't know anything about guns, that had one inherited to them, don't know they can go down to the pawn shop in most cases and get more money for their guns. And then the real funny gun buyback programs is they buy no questions asked. And that is interesting because, like you said, you can get on YouTube, internet, and you can find people selling pipe guns for $300. I mean, I could probably slap one together in a half hour, 45 minutes. And there was one lady who had I think it was a 9mm pistol, and she wanted a 45, and they were giving more money than her cheap generic 9mm pistol was selling for used. And so she sold it to them, I think, for $400. It was like a $160 gun. And she went and bought a Glock 45 with the money that she was able to get extra for her gun. So it doesn't work. You don't see criminals changing their minds and selling guns. They just don't do that. They just won't do that. So it's taking guns from, I mean, it's the classic example of taking guns from people that would never do a violent crime. And the people with the mindset that would take and use a gun in a violent crime, they're not turning their guns in. So, I mean, it's just a classic example of liberalism, really.
Well, it just seems like, and again, both of the critics, it just seems like their defense of this policy is, well, it makes us feel good. Right? We don't know if it's accomplishing anything, but it sure makes us feel good. So we're going to continue supporting it. And I guess insult anybody who might question the efficacy of the policy. Now, your bill has passed through the state house. I mean, have you heard any opposition? Have we ever done a gun buyback program in North Dakota? I guess I don't even know.
Not to my knowledge, not through the state, not through the city, not through the counties. There has not been any gun buyback programs. And that's a good thing. We don't want to be sending that message to especially children in schools that the state is taking guns. It's bad enough that, anyways, that's asset forfeiture. It's bad enough that we're taking guns off the streets that way. But any gun that is seized from the state, and that's a different subject, it should be sold at a public auction if it's used in a crime, and go right back on the street if it's a legal gun. And all guns are legal. You just need special permits for certain types of guns, which there's not a whole lot of them around. And fully automatic guns really aren't used in crimes statistically across the United States, especially in North Dakota.
I imagine the opposition to your bill has come from predictable sources, anti-gun groups, gun control groups, etc. Have you heard anything from law enforcement? How are they feeling about this?
You know, for the most part, all the law enforcement I talk to are 100% on it. They do not want to do it. I think I had one from Fargo, same gentleman that was on the red flag bill. I'm sure you're familiar with that. He was for it. But that was no surprise because most of the people that voted for the red flag bill were against my buyback program bill. So go figure, I guess. Anti-gun people pretty much hang out with anti-gun people. So, and us gun people protect those anti-gun people that aren't breaking crime. So I guess, go figure.
Yeah. Well, your bill moves on to the Senate next. Any guesses how it'll do there?
Well, in North Dakota, you have three parties. You have Republicans, Democrats, and then the Senate. So you never know which way they're going to blow.
Wow.
Hey,
if you want your bill to pass, maybe don't throw shade at the Senate, Luke.
Well, I guess I'm not a politician, so I just call it the way it is. And if people are Democrats, they probably should prove it by the way they vote. If people are Republicans, they should be able to prove it by the way they vote. And their voting record's pretty crystal clear. That's the fossil record. And, you can prove what you are by what you vote for. And in North Dakota, we aren't as conservative as we think we are consistently. And Mr. Porter, you've been following politics longer than I have been. I've been involved since 2007 in my local party. I was elected in, this is my second term. So you know very well that our party is not very conservative in North Dakota. And we can prove that by the bills that come through and that are passed and the ones that aren't passed. If people pay attention, they will realize the swamp isn't just in D.C., it's also in North Dakota.
Yeah. Well, I would argue sometimes, North Dakota gets this reputation as being a deep red state. I don't know that North Dakotans in general are really all that conservative, honestly. But we could probably have that debate another time. But I think there's a strong strain of prairie populism that runs through our state that is a little at odds with sort of traditional conservatism. Although, interestingly, right in line with Donald Trump republicanism, which I think is why he's probably so popular here. But again, stuff we probably stuff for another podcast. Luke, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it and appreciate what you do.
That's it for today's Plain Talk podcast. Thanks as always for listening. Remember, new episodes come out Monday through Friday. If you want to subscribe and have each new episode delivered to your devices, you can certainly do that. Just search for Plain Talk with Rob Port on the device of your choice. And by the way, if you have one of those at-home assistants like one of the Google Homes or Alexa from Amazon, if you can actually ask those to play the Plain Talk podcast. Just say, hey, play the Plain Talk with Rob Port podcast, and it should start playing. If you ever have any trouble subscribing to the podcast, if you have any feedback on the show, you want to send in questions for our guests who are on every week, Congressman Kelly Armstrong or Senator Kevin Kramer, you can do all of that at rob@sayanythingblog.com or just say hi. I like it when people say hi. Thanks for listening. We'll talk again.